Everybody. My name is Christiana Meritans, the Deputy Director for NAAEE, also known as the North American Association for Environmental Education. We are so thrilled to have you today for the UL Innovative Education Award 2017 applicant webinar. We're thrilled that so many of you could join us, and with all the interest we've been seeing in the SurveyMonkey, it's just very exciting to have you all here today. So what we did when we had asked you to fill out the registration form was to ask us any questions you might have. And then we took many of the questions where there were similarities, which there were plenty of commonalities among the questions you had asked. And so we took those and we are going to facilitate those questions in the beginning part of this discussion. And then if you'd like to use your chat functionality, Chris Hutton, my colleague from NAAEE, will be helping facilitate those, and at the end we'll leave some time to ask some of the questions that you might have as part of the discussion today. So we'll try to get as many as we possibly can, and hopefully we'll address a lot of them here in the discussion prior to that. So what I'd like to do is introduce you all to our wonderful group of panelists today. Who is just a group of people that I love and adore and have been so intricate to this program. So they are going to be our special guests for the day to help talk through what this award is and how to really think about the ways in which you can put together an application that is something that is stellar and will make you feel hopefully really excited about. So I am just going to ask each of them to introduce themselves, and then we'll go ahead and get started. So, Deepa, would you mind kicking us off?
Yes, no problem at all. Thank you, Christiana. This is Deepa Shankar. I work at Underwriters Laboratories. I am the Education Partnership Manager here at UL, and I'm truly, truly excited to be here on the call today and looking forward to talking to all of you soon.
Thank you, Deepa. Kate.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kate Flinner, and I am a researcher and manager of communications at New Knowledge Organization. It's a research organization, and we worked with UL and NAAEE to design the award, and now we moderate the judging of the award.
Great. Thank you so much, Kate. Ms. Thea.
Hi, everyone. I am the Director of Communications and Programs at Discover E. We're a coalition group interested in getting kids interested in engineering, and we host the Future City competition every year.
Great, thank you. And last but certainly not least, Greg.
Hi, everyone. My name is Greg Fizell. I'm the Program Director and co-founder of the McCall Outdoor Science School at the University of Idaho.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody. So why don't we go ahead and get it kicked off with some of the questions that we've gotten from our attendees. And Deepa, we're going to start with you. And a lot of people would like to know why the UL Innovative Education Award? Why is UL supporting something like this?
Sure, and that's a good question to start off with. So we give everybody a little background. UL is basically a global safety science company with a huge focus on science and engineering. We have been in existence for over 120 years, and we are focused heavily on safety and sustainability, and it's very important for UL to invest in programs that really emphasize science, technology, engineering, and math. And when we were keeping STEM programs in mind, we felt that it was extremely important to include the environment component to all this. So that's how this award was created, the eSTEM award, where we believe that eSTEM is the notion of using the environment as a pathway into STEM learning. And through this award, we are hoping that UL is able to support K through 12 programs that really encourage kids and help them go through critical thinking and problem-solving skills, which ultimately help them to acquire 21st century skills. So STEM focus is big for us. Using the environment as a platform is just a natural way for us to engage these students. And in the last 2 years, this is year 3 of our award, and in the last 2 years, we have, with the help of NAAEE and with the help of New Knowledge, we've really been able to identify some outstanding organizations who have won the awards And these 10 organizations really now are part of our family, and they do some great work in eSTEM, and all we do is support them. So we are truly proud of them. We are happy to have them as part of the family, and we are looking forward to another 5 incredible organizations that we can incorporate into our family again this year.
Great, thanks, Deepa. You know, it's interesting. We've received a lot of comments and great comments about the fact that when you look at the portfolio of winners in these last 2 years, the scope and sort of the work that they do can be vastly different. So, you know, today's guests, Thea and Greg, are a great example of 2 organizations that seem on the outside incredibly different, but both of them are winners, you know, with Future City being more engineering focused and Moss being more science focused. You know, is that something you encourage, that organizations don't feel like they have to fit into a certain box of eSTEM?
Yeah, and that's a great question, Christiana. I'm glad you're asking that, because yes, absolutely. We do not want people to feel that you have to be one over the other. I think that's what is beautiful about this award. I would highly encourage all our applicants to check out the priorities page on the ulinnovativeeducationaward.net website, which contains all of the information and the applications themselves. I would strongly urge you to go to the priorities page, because it really lists out, I think the page does a good job of listing out all our priorities. And you will find that, you know, the environment piece is a very important, critical piece, where we do like to see organizations and programs that use hands-on learning, you know, as part of their program. We also like to see programs that really do emphasize, you know, engineering as one of the basic foundations for their program. So there are some outstanding programs that use engineering, you know, more heavily than others. And then there are some who are really just very innovative. You know, we are also looking for the innovative piece of things, whether it's in the youth engagement piece of it, or just in how the program is conducted. So the innovation piece is really critical for us also. So we have listed out the priorities, you know, in our website. I would highly encourage all our applicants to look over the priorities page. But we have really a really wide breadth of applicants we have received so far. And like Christiana pointed out, I think Future City and McCall Outdoor School of Science are both classic examples of how you can qualify, even if, you know, one of you is more heavily focused on engineering or the other is more heavily focused on science. You know, they're all important to us, and we do look at each one of the applications very closely, and, you know, give individual attention to each.
Great, thanks, Deepa. That was perfect. So I think on that note, it would be a great opportunity to talk to Greg and Thea as past participants and also awardees. So Thea, I'm gonna kick it off to you. Why, and then Greg, if you could bounce off that would be great. Thea, why did you apply for this award?
It was an interesting award process. The email landed on my desk the day after we hosted our national finals. And I thought, oh, there's no way I have enough energy to apply for this award. But as I started reading it, I was blown away by how it captured everything that we were doing. All of the things you were interested in were all of the things we were interested in. You know, getting kids to think creatively about solving problems, getting kids to think about the environment, and getting kids to actually have authentic learning experiences. And the more I read and the more I, you know, poked around your website, I was like, these guys must have been looking at my materials when they were writing the application. It just seemed like a perfect fit.
And Greg, what about you?
Yeah, I would reiterate the same thing. I remember it was shortly before the holiday break here at the University of Idaho when I saw the announcement come out, and I thought the exact same thing as Thea, that holy cow, this is like they're talking about us. You know, we have to apply for this. This is the perfect fit. So that was certainly, you know, the first reaction, and my colleagues agreed that that it was just something that we had to do. And then I guess, you know, the other thing really is that we're always looking for ways to broaden our audience. So, you know, not just in kind of the direct educational programming we provide to our students, but also we want to spread the word, so to speak, and showcase our approach and showcase our model to other like-minded organizations, because you never know, you know, what collaborations might come out of that. So I think that was another big motivation that has paid really good dividends as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, we've found historically programs have said they have spent maybe a couple hours, and some other programs have spent several hours on the application process. Thea, can you give us a sense of what that process was like, especially knowing that you only found out about the program very, very near the deadline?
Yes, what I appreciated about the application was how you really broke it up into several questions and and categories, and there was choices within those categories. So as I read the different categories, I could think about the different aspects of my program and how it fit. And so it wasn't the normal process of writing that 15-page long linear, you know, application, or that longer from beginning to end application. And it was really more bite-sized chunks, and also the request for both anecdotes and evidence, you know, from our evaluations was a nice blend of being able to say, here's the stat and here's the underlying story that illuminates that. So having those smaller bite-sized chunks really helped me tell a narrative in a new way that I hadn't done before. And what was great about that was then I actually ended up having fodder for future grants and future applications for materials. And I could be like, oh, I have this great paragraph on how Future City is promoting civics, which is always a wonderful time saver.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about time? How much time did it take you?
You know, I think I did a little bit every day. You know, I read it. I only had, 5 days to do it, so I had to do a little bit every day. But I read the whole thing in its entirety, and I started thinking about it. I started drafting it. I didn't work on it all day every day. I think I worked on it for just a couple of hours every day, and just went back and thought, oh, this example works better here, or this one works better there, and just polished it up. But it wasn't a heavy lift by any imagination. I mean, I'm sure lots of people have written, those grants that take, just months and years to put together. This was just nice because I wasn't creating a new program. I was able to show off a program that I already had, and a program that fit your needs. And you weren't, asking us to invent a new aspect of the program to fit your criteria, but really to celebrate the program we had in place.
Great. And Greg, would love to hear from you on that.
Sure. I think we had the benefit of a little bit more time. So I think we started working on our application about a month in advance, and we had 3 people that were collaborating on the application. So we would, I was like the first draft guy, and so I would work on a first draft of a question. Usually we would take it a question at a time, and then I would pass it along to my colleagues for review and edits and inspiration, really. So we put quite a bit of time into it and quite a bit of effort. I would hesitate to like estimate a number of hours, but I would say that there was back and forth between the 3 of us on different draft versions over 30 days time. I think that was a luxury that we were lucky to have. We saw it early enough, and we were able to plan for it before we all left for the holiday break, and knew that when we got back that this was going to be one of our primary priorities. But yeah, I agree that it was it was a really good exercise in telling our story. Not one that you often get, because as Thea was saying, you know, if you're writing kind of your typical grant proposal, you're proposing typically something new, right? Something new and innovative, and something that you're going to try. But in this case, it was like, you know, tell us who you are and why you're good at this. And that has been, that in itself was just a really great exercise for us to go through, because now we have this really polished, well, we have two really, because we had a phase 1 and a phase 2 pieces of writing that now we can draw on all the time to help tell our story.
Absolutely, that definitely, and that's what we heard from a lot of applicants. And you know, before I kick it over to Kate, I'm just curious: is there any advice you would give to this year's applicants? Oh, actually, no. The first question is, this is a two-part question. I know there's less than a week left, and so, A, do you think there's does that offer enough time for people who are just coming in now to apply for this? And 2, any additional advice you might give them as they're going through the process? Say, I'll let you kick that off.
Yeah, I'll start. Yes, it's obviously enough time. I did it, and it worked out great. It was, I think that the advice was that I would give is just really look through and find all those wonderful stories. You know, what Greg was saying, it's really a chance to hone your storytelling is so true, because that's what was the wonderful part of the experience. Is it made me kind of you know, think new about how we talk about Future City and what we say and what aspects we promote. So I think that even if you don't succeed in getting the award, what you'll have is a wonderful wonderful way to tell your story and your organization's story. And I was going to jump in when Greg says you have, you know, if you get to be a finalist, you have 2 opportunities to tell that story. So, you know, the one thing I was like, oh no, I used all my best stuff in the first round. But it turned out I hadn't, and there was more to tell and more to share. So it was a wonderful experience, but I think, you know, it wasn't a gentle, you know, week, but I did it and it worked out great.
Greg.
Did you want me to comment on?
I think you can comment more on your advice, since you did have the luxury of time when doing this.
Okay. Yeah. So, you know, I think that what we really focused on was developing a compelling narrative. So we wanted to tell stories that we felt drew a picture of what it is we do and how that impacts those that we serve. And so, you know, as Thea said, it's a lot different than your typical grant application, which often can be quite dry. We took the tack of let's like really try to illustrate what we're doing here and give really vivid examples and you know, examples of our students and what they're doing and what they're learning and what they're accomplishing, and then to back that up with you know, evidence that it's a successful way to approach this type of education. So I think that's my biggest thing. Like, you know, focus not as much on the what, but focus more on the why. And why are you doing what you're doing? You know, what are the results? And you know, try to create a narrative that flows from the beginning of the application to the end of the application. And I think that the more eyes that you can get on that, the better. So, you know, for instance, like we had our 3 collaborators within our faculty and staff that were working on it, but then my wife is a writer, so I took it to her and, just said, hey, how does this flow from beginning to end? Does it tell a complete story?
Yeah, and I think that the part you mentioned, Greg, about telling a story, and I used a lot of quotes from our program participants and was constantly looking for that quote or that anecdote that backed up the claim that I was making, whether it was through that more dry verbiage we're all, know and love and write often. So I think that any quotes, any of those anecdotes that you often, share in a conversation, but maybe not so much in a grant application, this award is really looking for both sides of that story.
Great, thank you guys. And for all of our guests, just a reminder that if you do have additional questions, use the chat functionality within this application. So let's move into some of the more of the technical aspects of the application. And so, Kate, I'm going to start with you with just some basic questions. How many applications do we typically receive a year?
In the past few years, we have received about 120 each year, and we expect a little bit of an uptick for this year.
Great. And one of the main questions that everybody asked us is, what's the biggest mistake you see in the applications?
Yes, great question, everyone. The biggest mistake that we see is something that Thea and Greg have already touched on a lot. It's mistaking this award for a grant. This is an award for work that's already been done, so it's time to show off excellence and innovation and not dream about it. So we love to see evidence, and if you've done evaluation or quotes, all that kind of thing is very important. Another thing we see as a mistake is a lack of clarity. We really want people to concisely explain the innovation or the new thing that you're doing, and using cause and effect language whenever possible. So using data and using giving examples of, we did this because of this, and it resulted in this, is really important to help judges see what your program is accomplishing.
That's great. Thanks, Kate. And there's a big question too about, with the funding, is there an expectation that you add new components to your current project, or is it about scaling to additional sites, scaling to additional audiences? What do we see in terms of the expectations for, or what are the expectations for some of the funding? Or are there?
Yes, there aren't expectations for how you'll use the award money, and that is not something that judges really take into account when we decide who will be a finalist. We look more for something that makes sense for your organization, and expand the impact, whether that's through something administrative or in terms of audience or scaling to a new location. It's really, we are looking at this as a case-by-case basis rather than a one-size-fits-all.
Absolutely. And Kate, as someone who's been in this program from the very beginning, and you've had a bird's eye view as an evaluator, what are some other pieces of advice you would recommend to the applicants?
Oh, good question. I would really encourage everyone to read and digest the priorities section of the website. The key factors that judges assess are explained there. We try to be very transparent with how the applications are assessed, but you have access to everything that the judges have access to in terms of the rubric and information about the priorities of the award. So the website is your friend, and I strongly recommend looking at that and perusing past winners' work and applications that are on the resources page, but don't feel like you need to shoehorn yourself into that. We want to be transparent and provide guidance, but we are looking for something that we haven't really seen before too. So Yeah.
Right. And, Deepa, I'd love to just toss this to you because obviously, UL, it's not leading the evaluation piece, but obviously you're, thinking about this as the funder and the partner. When you think about a successful application, what are some of the key criteria? And I don't mean in terms of just the criteria we see on the priorities page, but just from UL's perspective.
Sure. From UL's perspective, I think what we are really looking for is, how hands-on is this? We know that there are so many different programs out there. There are many different ways to do it, but we are really looking for ways that it engages the students. Does it really get them to utilize, critical thinking skills? Are your programs looking to solve challenges? Those are all important points that we look for. Is this problem solving? Is this, tapping into kids' critical thinking skills? How does it prepare them to then, face some of the 21st century challenges that they could potentially see in the coming years? So how do these programs kind of prepare them for that? And also how innovative it is. There are, of course, programs out there, so many different great programs out there, but, what makes your program different or innovative? So whatever is that story that you have that's unique to you, we would highly encourage you to mention your unique selling proposition, almost, so to speak, about your program, if you want to highlight that. And of course, we love programs that are engineering based. We love programs that really utilizes the environment as a platform. So they're all great salient points that we look for when we look at individual applications. And like Kate has said before, and we pointed out before also, every application is looked upon on a case-by-case basis. So, and if you look at our past 10 winners, we would highly encourage you to go back and take a closer look at our past 10 winners. And I think they are an excellent reflection of what we are looking for in a program. They are unique, they are innovative, they are fabulous to where they can actually take it to scale, they can grow their programs, they are sustainable. I think they're all wonderful examples. So if you're in doubt, I would highly encourage you to go back and look at the past winners and you'll get a real sense for what we're looking for.
Great.
I hope that answers the question somewhat.
Yeah, no, that was great, Deepa. And, just some other technical questions for you, Kate. There's a big question about formal education. What does that mean when we say we're not formal educator or formal education programs are not eligible?
Yes, we mean by that that institutions or schools who provide degrees or certificates that are considered part of a student's primary education are not eligible for the award. Organizations that may meet as a after-school program in a school or a college that helps sponsor or lead an extracurricular activity are certainly eligible as long as those activities in the program aren't part of aren't graded.
Absolutely, and I think a really great example of that is MAS, McCall Science School, who is a program within the University of Idaho. And so just so everybody knows, as we talk about the budget aspect of this too, the program does have the expectation is the program is no more than a $3 million budget. And if, for example, your program sits within a university or another larger organization like a museum or an aquarium, and that organization has a much larger budget than $3 million, but the program operating within that organization stays under $3 million, that is absolutely fine. So please don't let that be a deterrent, especially if you work within that kind of environment. And the same thing if you have a program within a university, or we've seen like a lot of high school and middle school after school programs that apply that do work with students from the school. They're just, the school itself is not applying. So that's a really, really important distinction to make. And, I think that the biggest question, one of the other big questions that we get is around this idea, there's only 5 winners, so is it worth me applying? And, and Thea and Greg, I'd love to ask you, you know, had you not been a part of the top 5 winning programs, would this still have benefited you, or would you have found it more as a bit of a waste of time?
Well, it's hard, you know, we did win, but I have used what I wrote for the application so many times in so many other places, and shared it throughout our network. And I know other people have used, because we have chapters and regions all you know, around the country, and we know they're using it too. So for us, it was really worth it. You know, I think Greg said it really well when he said, you know, it really helps you craft your storytelling, and so it helped us think about the aspects that we're really most proud of. And when Kate was speaking, one thing that I would say as something that was critical to our success is I had those rubrics open the whole time I was writing the application. And every time I thought I had an answer, I went back and checked how it lined up with what NAA, EE, and UL were specifically looking for. So those rubrics were really a lifesaver, especially in that condensed time period.
Greg, any thoughts there?
Yep. Yeah, I would reiterate. If we hadn't been one of the winners, I would have been so very, very sad because for the time that we, you know, saw the RFP and started working on our application, I mean, I had this really strong belief that we were going to win. And I just thought that I just couldn't imagine that there were other programs out there that were such a perfect fit for what the award was all about. So that being said, it would have been a big bummer. But I definitely, we have used the narrative material that we developed through that process over and over and over again. So it was well worth the effort.
Great, thanks. And we do hear that from a lot of people that have applied and have not even made the finalists. So, you know, it's been helpful for us to think about as we refine this rubric and the application every year, because certainly based on feedback we get from the applicants, it's allowed us to do this. And, you know, another question that we've gotten a lot is this idea, does ULIEA support new programs or is it for existing programs? And the quick answer to that would be is if your program has been operating for a year, but you can demonstrate impact and you can demonstrate innovation that aligns with the rubric, 100%, it is eligible. But if it's a new program you're trying to start, then unfortunately it's not, you wouldn't be eligible for this year. But we would highly encourage you, if you've already had a year under your belt and you feel like you have some really strong outcomes that you can use as part of the application, then absolutely. So I want to take a moment because we've gotten through quite a few of the questions, and I want to give our guests a chance to ask any questions in the chat functionality. And looks like we have one, so I'm going to go ahead and ask this question to the panel and let the rest of you think of any other questions you might have. So one question was, if we have a program that addresses all 3 areas, is it better to show how we meet them all or to focus in one area in particular? So I think Kate, Deepa, I'm gonna toss that over to you two.
Yeah, this is Kate. I'll start. I say yes, all 3 would be best because judges will look at all 3 of those main criteria. Within those 3, however, I would try to drill down and be very concise and clear about 1 to 2 of those subpoints. So yeah, that's my response to that. Deepa?
Yeah, I would completely agree with Kate. If you have a program that addresses all 3, by all means, definitely showcase all 3 of them. Because it will really give us a sense of, you know, the breadth and depth of your programs. So definitely mention all of them. But if you're able to drill down further on one more than the other, that's great. But please do mention all 3 of them if you have, you know, more than one.
Great, thanks, Deepa. So another question from Dwayne. What about organizations that are conducting multiple programs that meet the criteria? Should we focus on only one program? And I'm going to say yes, absolutely focus only on one program, unless you would like to submit a few applications for several programs. But Kate, why don't you jump in on that as well?
I think you're right, Christiana. Though I'm reminded of one of our winners from last year from Michigan. They are kind of like a consortium or a network for many other types of organizations. And if that's the type of thing you're talking about, Dwayne, they submitted one application. But if it's really just one or two programs that you're conducting yourselves, then I would focus on the one you feel is the strongest, or submit 2 applications or more.
Great, yeah, definitely. So it looks like we don't have any for, oh, here we go. Here's another one. There's no, let's see. So there's a question here. There's no formal place for background or history. Do you suggest a place for this? And Lauren, and if you don't mind clarifying, and I'm so sorry that you're on mute, but would you mind clarifying in terms of background about the program? And if so, I'm just going to take a wild guess. Okay, great, thank you. Yes, so there is on the website, there is a bit of history there, and I'm happy to talk to you, Lauren, offline. You should have my email address, so we can dive a little bit deeper into that. We do have actually, Kate, can you talk a little bit about the study that we did before we launched this program?
I think Lauren means applicant history.
Got it.
Yeah, Christiana, she's talking about their own background and history of the organization itself. I'm
so sorry. Now, so Kate, do you want to jump in on that?
Sure. I think you'll find there are places to add that throughout. I don't think we're looking for, an extensive history. I think you can show, your program's growth over time in the questions. I'm trying to, maybe Thea and Greg have some insight about how they handled this.
Yeah, I found that I weaved it in as I went, that it was different questions allowed me to tell the story of why we founded the program in 1992 and what need we were trying to address, and then drill down on those those sub bullets. So I did. I weaved in the story as I went. And in different places at different times, and then I had to go back and make sure that I wasn't saying the same thing over and over again in each of the different points. But it was kind of an interesting way to talk about who we were.
Yeah, same here. I'm not sure if this question still exists, but there's one near the beginning that was like, please describe in less than 500 words how this project demonstrates innovation in eSTEM. And that's where we took like 2 or 3 sentences to start that, of who we were, where we'd come from and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree, Greg. I think that's what I did too.
Okay, thanks, guys. And then we just got a program from Stephen. Hello, we are a zoo conducting an environmental science program within a local school district. Does this qualify? So, Stephen, if you're operating as a 501c3, if your program is separate from the school but serving the middle school kids in that school, you are absolutely eligible for the program. But if it's a program that is operating and the fiscal agent is the school, then you are not eligible for it.
Or if the students are receiving grades for the environmental science program, then it's ineligible.
Thanks, Kate. How do reviewers respond to single-sex schools, boys or girls? Well, Marilee, if it's a school, so the school would not be eligible at all. If it's a program, a 501c3 program, after school program, it would not. Kate and Deepa, please jump in. I can't see that you would get dinged for having an all boys or all girls program.
Right. No, we would have no issues with that at all.
Okay, so there's a question about the budget. Is there a space to put a specific budget, but more of a space to tell the story of what we would do with the money? Kate, why don't you jump in on that?
Sure. I'm rereading your question just to make sure I understand it. You will not be required to show a formal report about how you've spent the money, but I believe you will be in conversation, if you are a winner, very frequently with UL to talk about what you're up to and how you're working on expanding or growing your program, in line with how you described in the application. But we are not looking for extensive budget sheets and justifications or anything like that.
And to follow up to that question, what is the award period? Can the implementation and programming be longer than a year? And yes, it can definitely be longer than a year. Just know that the winners within the first year, we do have quarterly meetings, and there are quarterly reports, which are not extensive at all, that we ask from each of the organizations, but we don't expect you to spend down the money within the first year. If you're able to extend it for 2 years, fantastic. It's truly to your discretion. The preferences to serve, Juliet asked if there's a preference to give into programs that serve underserved audiences, or is it really the depth and reach of the program? The depth and the reach is obviously critical for as part of the criteria, but Deepa, as UL, I think it's probably more important that you talk about that a bit more.
Oh, sure. Definitely the depth and reach of the program is what we will look at, Juliet. But if in the process that your programs do serve underserved audiences, that's great. That's almost like icing on the cake. We would love that, but in terms of criteria, that's not just something that we are exclusively looking at. We look at the overall program, the overall reach and depth of the program. So to answer your question, we would love to see underserved populations served, but we don't just look for that.
Yes, and I would like to add on that we specifically did not define underserved because that differs in many locations and in its meaning to different people. So we leave that up to applicants to define how they're meeting a need, and judges will assess, if how that's meaningful to the community, and balance that with the scale and reach of the program as well as they consider the award or the application.
Yeah. Great, thanks. A question from Christina. If your program is already grant funded by another agency, is there any restriction for applying this award to the same program, essentially growing the budget for that program? To answer your question, absolutely not. We understand that as a nonprofit, getting as much funding as you possibly can to support your amazing work is the way to do it. So we've also heard from our winners that they've also been able to use this award as a way to get matching funds for their program. So, if it can do vice versa, whatever, we definitely do not discriminate against already funded programs. Janelle, can you give a brief overview of the first and second rounds of review? And actually we have 3 now. So Kate, do you want to give just a quick synopsis of our 3 process review?
Sure. This is also on the website in the About section, I believe. But very quickly, the applications first go to a desk review from judges around the country, and a number of applications are shortlisted and then are judged at the end of March by an in-person judging panel who have been involved in this award before. they're not winners or applicants, but they are people who have worked with us as judges before. And 10 finalists are selected at that point, and they are asked to submit some supplemental information. In the past year, we have just tried a very informal video from each finalist to address specific questions that judges want to see from the first round, so see answered. So that's likely what we'll be doing this year as well, but we'll give you plenty of time to prepare for that if you are a finalist. The finalists are then judged in late May, and the announcement about the winners go out in June or early July.
Thanks, Kate. We have another question here from Mara B. Is a 501c3 program integrated into a non-degree / diploma awarding school eligible? Ooh, that's a good one.
I would say email us about that and give us a little bit more detail, and we can talk to you on a email basis.
Is there any advantage to collaborating with other organizations? The challenge with that would be only one organization would be eligible for the funding. And so let's say, for example, your organization partnered with somebody else, we would only be able to award one of the two organizations. So if you decided that that's what you were going to do and you wanted to help distribute the finances the way you had decided, that I think would be fine, but let me make sure I'm not speaking out of turn. Kate, Deepa, any thoughts there?
I think, oh, go ahead, Deepa.
No, actually go ahead, Kate, and I'll jump in.
I think collaborations are fine, but I would make sure all of the collaborators are very clear on the game plan for if you are awarded a prize, because as Christiana mentioned, we will only be submitting the award to the lead organization, and it'll be up to them to figure out how to distribute. So things are very simple on our end from that, but might be more complicated for collaborations.
Great.
Yeah, I just want to chime in that exactly what Kate and Christiana said. We don't see a problem with groups of you coming together and applying, but as long as you can figure out how you want to share the funds, I think the onus will be on the organization side. But I don't see that being a huge issue if you want to collaborate together and apply. I think that should be fine.
I'm going to jump around here for just a second, and it's a question from Lissa. How have past winners utilized engineering in their programs in less traditional ways? So, Kate, I'll let you kick that off, and then Greg, I'm going to toss that to you because I think you'd be a really good example of that.
Yes. So if you take a look at, kind of scroll through all of the winners in the past, you'll see that they are thinking very much outside the box in terms of, or in unconventional ways about engineering. We don't see, in many times there's a misconception that engineering is it's part of the hard sciences, and you involve civil engineering or robotics, and that's not necessarily true. We look at design as very much a part of engineering, and if students are studying an issue in their community, such as like rainwater runoff, and they design a system to ameliorate the effects of that, then we consider that engineering. And that's just one very small example, and Greg could probably talk about it a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, I think, our approach to engineering has become more explicit as of late, but I think earlier in when we were preparing our application, it was we kind of took it as engineering being problem solving. So one of the case studies that we highlighted in our application, the students were looking at water resources in their town, and we gave them the challenge of designing a town that addressed energy and water scenarios while they were looking at the potential effects of climate change. So, it wasn't like they, doing something in the traditional sense of what a lot of us might think of as engineering, like building a bridge or building a computer, but rather they were working in collaborative teams to solve a problem and to design with the use of technology, a town that would mitigate climate change effects on their local water resources.
Great, thanks guys. Another question from Key Tuning. We are 501c3 designed specifically to apply and receive for private funds in support of the school district. The program we're applying for is implemented and managed by the school district, but students are not graded on the program. Are we eligible to apply? I feel like the answer Kate is going to give is email us so we can get a little bit more context. But Kate, what do you think?
Yep, please email us. I don't want to jump the gun and tell you the wrong answer.
Yeah, absolutely. We're running out of time here, so I'm going to kick it down to Dwayne. Back to the question of multiple programs. Depth and reach, which do you think is more important? For example, we have a program that is intensive, 40+ hours of programming, but only serves a few hundred students. On the other hand, we have a short 2-hour program that serves thousands. Any advice on how we should consider which to feature? And I will jump in first and say, impact, what kind of impact and innovative sort of programming you have is definitely key. If you're reaching thousands of students but not having a real significant impact, that I might say that might not be the program, because if you serve 20 kids but are doing one of the most amazing programs we've ever seen, we're not going to ding you for the fact that it's only 20 kids, because we really are seeking out innovation in eSTEM. But let me not stand alone on this. Deepa, what are your thoughts?
I agree, Christiana, with very much what you said. I think impact is really important for us. If you're able to have really deep impact but low reach, that's okay. And part of what we are hoping to do with the award is to be able to help organizations bring their programs to scale. So if that's one way of doing it, then that's great. So please don't hesitate to show your high impact programs to us. Of course, at the same time, if you've got programs that are pretty impactful but also have great reach, then that's fantastic. But we just want to emphasize that we will not hold that against you just because you're reaching very few students.
Absolutely. And then I think we have one last question here. If a high school that has a 501c3 within its walls, but separate from the ongoing formal ed provided in a traditional school, say an after-school program or science club or non-traditional approach to science, I think our answer would be just email us, and once we kind of understand the context, we can help dive in a little bit deeper with that. So, yes, I think, and Chris on our team just had a suggestion too about low reach, high impact. Chris, do you want to jump in on that quickly and give us a quick example?
Sure. I was just thinking about that just to give an example to show that this is something we consider. One of our programs, I believe it was, and correct me if I'm wrong, Women in Natural Sciences, only did impacted 20 girls a year? Is that correct?
Yeah, 20 to 25, I think. 20
to 25 girls a year, but it was a scaffolded program that followed these girls from the beginning of high school all the way through the end of high school, helped them apply for college, took a small group of them to Mongolia. I mean, it was extremely, extremely high impact, but low reach. And that reach had nothing against it. It was still a very great program, a very good program, and it scored highly, and it made it into the winner's circle the first year.
Thanks, Chris. That's a perfect example. A perfect example.
You're welcome.
So everybody, I think that's it for our questions in terms of what we see here in the chat. So I'd like to thank you all so much for joining us. We will send a follow-up to this, and you do have our contact information, and we're more than happy to answer any questions that were not addressed in this webinar.
Christiana, I'm sorry to interrupt, but one of the questions was, what is the best email address that people can send their questions to?
Oh, thanks, Deepa. I didn't see that. Oh, here I see it.
No problem.
Chris, what is our UL address?
Muting right now. I think they actually go directly to me, so I'm UL email address forwards directly to me. So I'm happy to just give my direct email address.
So Chris, do you want to just put that in the chat room right now so everybody can take that before we go?
I'm gonna do it right now.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And Chris will then know to forward to Kate and or others if if he needs to do that.
Absolutely.
Yes, I absolutely know the proper persons to forward to, so I can get this message. Anyone you need it to go.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank
Our
you.
panelists, are there any last thoughts you'd like to share with the group before we end?
I would just say good luck. And if you're lucky enough to win, it's not like a normal partnership with a grantor. You get to have a collaborative opportunity with other organizations that are doing similar work, and you get fabulous partners in UL and NAAE.
Thanks, Thea.
Thanks, Thea.
Yeah, I would just concur and say that if you have the spidey sense that I had at the time, and it was like, this is such a perfect fit, there's no way we can lose, go for it.
Absolutely. And I just want to
I agree 100% because I had that same thought the whole time.
I will make a little plug as well. The NAAE conference is going to be in Puerto Rico this October. And we introduced a new thing last year where our winners from the past 2 years met at the NAAE conference. And we'll be doing the same thing this year, which will also include the year 3 winners. So if you apply and you win, good chance you'll be coming to Puerto Rico. So if there's nothing else, everybody, I just want to thank you so much for attending this call. We are so excited to see your applications. And please know that because there's such a limited amount of time, there's never too late of a time to email or call, and we will be on standby to help you with any questions you might have. So thank you, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful evening, and we look forward to seeing your applications next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Good
Thanks,
luck, everyone.
Christiana.
Thanks, guys.
Good luck, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.